Now, we are aware of the forms of preparing a trial balance. We've already illustrated how to prepare trial balance by ledger balancing. The second one is preparing the trial balance by totals. What we are trying to say here is that under examination condition, the examiner would give what list of total balances, and we might be required to prepare a trial balance from that list of what balances. The assumption is that the books and the necessary ledgers have been prepared and balanced up before arriving at the word figure. So the total balances given will be used in what extracting the trial balance. In preparing the trial balance by totals, we must understand the rules. The rules are: 1, all asset items are debited. We know our asset items already: cash, bank, debtors, equipment, furniture, land, property. These are all asset items. In this scenario of preparing trial balance, all the asset items are debited. The next one, all liability items are credited. We already know our liability items like loan, creditors, unpaid dividends, unpaid tax, debentures. If you have an investment somewhere, that is more or less an asset. So use the asset, but here it has to be liability items. Those borrowings, those owings, loan to the bank, for instance. Those are liability items. Whether long-term or short-term, they are what? Credited. So we have expense items. All expense items, them already, like insurance, communication, transportation, salaries and wages. Those are all expense items. They are debited. Then we have all income items: the sales, discount received, commission received, subscriptions, donations. Those are all income items and they are credited. Now, there's what we call provision or accumulated expense items. In some organizations, where there's no definite establishment of an expense for a particular period, it is possible to make provision for that expense. Such provision or accumulation is usually what? Credited. In the same vein, you can also make provision for income items. You're sure, but because of the reporting timing, that income has not been earned, and as such, provision is made for it. In that scenario, provisions made for incomes are what? Are debited. So I'll say briefly again: all asset items are debited, all liability items credited, expense items are debited, income items are credited, provision for expense items credited, and provisions for income items debited. Now, this is an illustration of how trial balance is prepared by totals. Now, this is an illustration. Here we're seeing the following list of balances were extracted from the books of Fraggle Enterprises for the month of March 2020. You are required to draw a trial balance from the list. So here are the lists of items: sales purchases, land and building, equipment, rent, communication expense, transportation, provision for discount received, motor vehicle, cleaning expense, discount received, discount allowed, inventories, repairs, motor vehicle expense, rental income, provision for depreciation of motor vehicle, cash in hand, cash at bank, debtors and creditors. Now, these are the items and these are the total balances. And now you are asked to prepare a trial balance from this. You must remember the rules. Here are the rules. Assets are debited, liabilities are credited, expenses debited, incomes credited, provision or accumulated expense items credited, provision or accumulated income items debited. Now with these rules, we'll go ahead to prepare the trial balance. So we'll take them one after the other. So here's the first item here. We have sales. Sales here is 967,000. So we must identify the item. Okay, what item is it? Is it asset? Is it liability? Is it expense? Is it income? Sales is an income. So what is the rule here? The income here says credit. So these are our trial balance. Fragile Enterprises trial balance as at 31st March 2020. So we have sales here credited. The next one here says purchases. Purchases, this is the question. 589,500. Purchases here is an expense item. And the rule says expenses should be debited. So we have purchases here in the trial balance on the debit side. The next item here says land and building. 185,000. Land and building here is an asset. Assets are debited. So we have land and building debited 185,000. Here we have equipment. Equipment is an asset. Assets are debited. So here we have equipment, the debit side here 97,500. The next one says rent. 17,500. Rent is an expense. Expenses are debited. So we have rent here 17,500 the debit side. The next one says communication expense 18,750. That's an expense. Expense are debited. We have it in the debit side 18,750. Next one says transportation. Transportation is an expense. So we have transportation here on the debit side. The next one says provision for discount received. Remember I told you provision or accumulated income items, are debited. So we have provision for discount received here, the debit side. The next one, motor vehicle. Motor vehicle is an asset. So debit it. Motor vehicle assets debited. Cleaning expense. That's an expense. Debited. All expenses are debited. Cleaning expense here debited 16,700. The next one says discount received. That's an income. Incomes are credited. So discount received here is credited 23,500. The next one, discount allowed. Discount allowed is an expense. Expenses are debited. So we have discount allowed here 36,750. Discount allowed here is 14,700. That's debit. The next one we have inventories. That's like stock or goods. Goods are assets. They are business resources. Assets are debited. So we have inventories there, debit 6,750. The next one we have repairs. Repairs are expenses. Expenses are debited. So we have repairs in the debit side here. So we have motor vehicle running expense. Motor vehicle running expense, that's an expense. Expenses are debited. So we have motor vehicle running expense here, debit 13,700. The next one here says rental income. 281,450. That's an income. Incomes are credited. So we have rental income here in the credit side, 281,450. The next one, provision for depreciation of motor vehicle. Remember, I told depreciation is an expense, a reduction in the the cost of of an asset. You know, you understand what I'm saying? So, provisions for expenses. I told you are credited. So we have provision here for depreciation of motor vehicle credited here, 90,000. The next one says cash in hand. Cash is an asset. Assets are debited. We have cash in hand here, debited, 143,700. The next one says what? Cash at bank. Money at bank is an asset. Assets are debited. We have cash at bank, 143. Sorry, 50, is it 143,700? So we have debtors here, 54,200. So we have debtors. So their assets, 54,200. The next one here we have creditors. Creditors here is 75,500. Creditors here we have 75. So our debtors here is 54,200. Our creditors here 75,500. Creditor here is a liability, and they are credited. So basically, it is a straight form of preparing trial balance, since they are just giving us the totals and asking us to prepare a trial balance. But you must remember the rule. Some call it cardinals of trial balance here. Assets are debited, liabilities credited, expenses debited, income credited. Provision for expense items is credit. Provision for income items is debit. With that in mind, we just pick them and put them in their in their respective columns, whether debit balance or credit balance. So at the end of the day, remember I told you we were testing the arithmetical accuracy of the ledger balances. Your debits here must be equal to your credit here. So if you test it, total debit here is 1,437,450 naira. Total credit here is the same thing, 1,437,450 naira. That is the test of the arithmetical accuracy. So we've been able to look at preparing trial balance by totals. We also looked at preparing trial balance by ledger you can pick questions, involving preparing ledgers and then balancing up before the trial balance, or pick questions that involves preparing trial balance from just list of total balance is given. If you have questions, you can reach me on 08136506356 or send me an email, jeremiah.dosu@gmail.com. You can inbox me as well for clarification. So drop questions in the comment sections. I'll be there to respond with answers. Thank you.